Welcome back everyone to another Company of Heroes 2 replay cast. This time it is going to be a free as you can see on, what is this map, Elderbrook Station. Zajrodina. How do I play? As you can see, it is Martel who has sent in the replay. Where are you? You are on the right hand side of the spawn. We're playing as the Soviets. His friends are going to be Mikhail Tukhachevsky, playing it also as the Soviets, and the Maxis 8888. Also Soviets. So triple Soviet on Elderbrook Station. It is going to be interesting to see what they do. On the opposing team, we have Spuknov Love as the Wehrmacht, Diskerado as the OKW, and Davis as the Wehrmacht. So 2 Wehrmacht and 1 OKW. I am wondering how the Soviets are going to deal with this. I myself don't exactly like the Soviets in maps that are kind of like this, with, well, very narrow fronts that are, you know, pretty easy to defend from one flank to the other, making, of course, flanking maneuvers and maneuver warfare pretty hard. It's really where the Soviets don't shine. I mean, if you think about it, their late game is entirely revolving around either artillery, which, to be fair, Elderbrook Station does have a lot of opportunities to use, or just the massive flanks. But, oh well, we'll see. First engagements, of course, the Pioneers establishing their superiority over these combat engineers at close range. However, it seems like the Soviets are playing this very safely. We have a couple of tier 1s, in fact. We have scout snipers coming for Martel, and Mikhail Tukhachevsky is going for the tier 2, but his friend, of course, is going with the Pino Battalion, so double tier 1 plus 1 tier 2, whereas the Axis, as you can see, are just kind of spamming in a lot of infantry squads, although we do see a mortar and a machine gun from Spuknov. Very well done, however, by Tukhachevsky. He's going to get his conscripts into that building, which is going to be absolutely devastating to these Volksgrenadiers, forcing them back, and also kind of scaring away these Volksgrenadiers on the opposite side of the train. However, it seems like the machine gun over here from Spuknov is going to be able to just kind of lay down some fire from the other side of the square and force away the conscripts, who have really no way to retaliate. In the meantime, in the south, his other conscripts are getting completely massacred by the Sturm Pioneers, who activate just beast mode and just completely smash the squad, almost destroying it very closely, escaping away with just an inch of health. In the meantime, in the north, we have the Pinos from the Maxis. They're trying to break through the defenses of Davis. However, it seems like he's going to be just kind of hiding behind his buildings and barbed wire, and this is, well, eventually going to go the way of the Pinos with all of that firepower concentrated onto 12 SVTs. They're probably going to be able to defeat these Grenadiers, but not without casualties. In the meantime, in the south, it seems like we have 2 Soviet players just kind of huddling up into one ball and charging ahead. Surging forward, however, leaving the sniper with no flanking cover, which the Grenadiers quite rightly exploit and just try to do some damage to the sniper squad. However, sniper you know, microed, kites away and gets a lot of kills on the Grenadiers, forcing them to retreat. So first engagement overall, it seems like it's gone to favor of the Germans, as they're the ones that hold the ground, the crucial ground, I guess you could say, in the north and in the center with the houses. However, it seems like finally the Pinos from Martel are going to be able to capture the strategic point of the train station. They're still under fire from that machine gun, which is now racking up just damage for free, along with a mortar that's kind of bombarding the station. However, the mortar and the machine gun can't really force away the Pinos forever. In fact, the entire Soviet strategy seems to just kind of be huddled around that, you know, very important strategic point. And it's not like the Germans have really any ways to attack into it, because as you can see, these 2 Wehrmacht players are going with a lot of invested resources into mortars and machine guns, which they probably should. And the OKW players are free Volksgrenadiers. It's not like he has that much offensive power anyway. And as you can see, rifle grenades coming through to try to even the odds a little bit from the Grenadiers are not going to succeed. The you know, Pinos just kind of deftly dodge away and then get back into the building exactly where they came from. So even a little bit of a waste of munitions coming through from the Germans. Right now the snipers, however, are getting pressured quite hard. They're up to 9 kills, which is pretty impressive, but you know, the pretty much intense flanking maneuvers and fire from these German infantry squads, forcing them to retreat, probably because he has just upgraded, yep, the medics the medics that are going to be able to heal up the snipers and give them a lot more security in actually making their deadly shots against the enemy. It seems like very well done, though, by the Maxis. He's been able to push away the Germans in the north, thus establishing a little bit of a line of control. He does not have any support weapons, which might change right now as a 120mm mortar is called into the battlefield. So, of course, this nasty unit is going to be very, very dangerous against these machine guns, against any kind of fight, or against the enemy infantry in any kind of fight that precludes their movement, essentially. Whenever they're trying to take cover, hiding into a building, trying to sort of statically fight the enemy, which is what the Germans usually try to do. So this is potentially pretty dangerous for the Germans, as the 120 is going to be something that they're going to have to worry about. The problem is, of course, we're pretty much at a stage where the Soviets are trying to push into the enemy sort of rear lines. As you can see, we have some nice flanking maneuvers from these Penals, getting a good harassment on the field point. In the north, we have the Maxis pushing up very, very far. So I think a squad of shock troops would have served them a lot better for its offensive role than you know, the 120mm mortar, because it's not like right now the Germans are really in any established positions unless they get into these buildings. And unfortunately, there's some pretty nasty things coming the way of the Allies, namely the flamethrower half-track. In fact, the second flame half-track is going to come through. This is going to be very, very bad for our Allies, as they have absolutely no counter to these things. In fact, it's much more likely that they're going to cause a lot of rush to counter them. In fact, Tukhachevsky picked the reserve army. So he's going to have those lovely AT partisans, which are going to be a constant threat against these flame half-tracks, both because of their ability to, of course, spawn at any point of the map and throw a lot of anti-tank grenades. In fact, Tukhachevsky very smartly upgrades AT grenades right now. So he's going to be able to use those AT grenades from the partisan tank hunters and, of course, the Panzerschreck to do quite a lot of damage to these half-tracks. Still, like, the partisans are going to be very, very vulnerable to the flame half-tracks themselves, because they usually spawn, of course, from the building, and then they get out from some door. So they're very, very huddled up together, the models, and they're very vulnerable to any kind of flame or AoE damage. So, of course, Tukhachevsky is going to have to be very, very careful in their usage. It's interesting also that he's pooling about 560 manpower. And so that, of course, means that he's kind of saving up so that he can use these partisan tank hunters at will. And in fact, more half-tracks are coming through from the Germans. Diskerado is going to be pushing along the flak half-track, which is basically going to serve the same function as the flame half-track, except a little bit less focused towards attacking buildings and a little bit more focused towards providing, of course, suppression. Conscripts trying to charge after that flame half-track, but they're going to get stopped by the machine gun and forced away. In fact, the Soviets as a whole are getting kind of forced away. Well done by Spuknov getting his grenadiers into that house. He's also floating quite a bit of manpower, so in my opinion, it would be good for him to go with another grenadier squad, because 2 of them, yes, it's good, but 3 of them is even better. Nicely done with these partisans. They're going to be spawning in a pretty good spot. The problem is they get a nice Panzerschreck shot on the flak half-track. That does quite a bit of damage, but can they finish it off? I don't think so. Oh, actually they can. Very, very well done. This actually just kind of justifies the purchase already of that partisan squad. The flak half-track is 270.55. So, of course, basically the same amount of manpower and also fuel, and they also managed to destroy the second flame half-track. So, well done, well done. Only 1 flame half-track is on the field. No, it's dead. Where's the other flame half-track? I have no idea what happened to it, but it's dead. So very well done. It looks like it hit a mine? No, it was just PT arrest, I think, from these guys. Do they have a vehicle kill? Yes, they do. So well done by the Allies, getting rid of those very, very important early game threats. And that is a lot of fuel being wasted from the Germans. I mean, let's check this out. Of course, the flak half-track is a little bit more expensive than the flame half-track, 55 as opposed to 30. But that's still 60, 111. No, 115, sorry. 115 fuel. Yeah, being invested by the Germans into those 3 units. Considering their fuel income right now, yeah, that's about a minute and a half of fuel, considering the entire team. Because, they're getting, as a team, they're getting 69 per minute. Right now, 60, because they just lost a point, but yeah. So 69 115 is basically almost 2 minutes worth of fuel. So this is very, very well done by the Allies, slowing down the German teching race quite a bit, and the shock troops are going to be able to get into the house, which is very, very good, of course. They're going to be able to massacre these Panzer Grenadiers with their Papashas at close range, helped along with the flame. This time it's on their side, it's the flamethrower engineers. In the meantime, as you can see on the left-hand side and the center, we have a nice push coming in from the Allies, and the shock troops, while taking some casualties, are going to be absolutely storming through. Rifle grenade comes through and actually wipes out a Pino squad. Well done by the Grenadiers. So Davis getting a good kill. Unfortunately, an RGD-34 grenade is going to be thrown very late, and anticipating a retreat, it does not take into account that Davis was actually not retreating, and so the grenade does miss when it was supposed to hit. Very unfortunate for him. And in the south, a massive conscript wave from, well, actually, no, it's only 2 units, but a conscript wave from Tukhachevsky is actually going to charge through, get some good damage done on those Focus Grenadiers, and destroying, in fact, at close range, the Sturm Pioneers. Of course, helped out by the 82mm mortars, and, ooh, is that a defensive doctrine? Yes, it is a defensive doctrine from Charles Martel. So getting out those 45mm AT guns. The tiny AT guns, I mean, they could be interesting to use. Also, rapid conscription being popped by Mikhail Tukhachevsky, whose mortars are actually under threat of enemy action. So he can get some pretty interesting value out of his mortars, soaking up the enemy fire while other units deal with them. Unfortunately, he didn't get any conscripts back, any conscript squads. He's still got 34 seconds, however, and that's why he's charging in with these conscripts, trying to get into some kind of position where he can die honorably for the glory of Comrade Stalin and the motherland, so that he can get some more conscripts out of the Soviet people factories. Because otherwise, I mean, that would be 120 munitions wasted, which, to be completely fair for the Soviets in the early game, it's not that big of a deal, considering that the Soviets aren't really the biggest munitions users. And in fact, as soon as he gets the conscript squad, he retreats, but it may be too late, as one conscript squad is very, very close to dying. It will not be close enough, however, as the second conscript squad also tries to fight for its life. Actually, the first one dies. The second one is also gunned down by the machine gunners from the building. And this time, he's not going to get a second conscript squad to replace it. So he loses 2 veteran upgraded conscript squads to just get 1 unupgraded unveteran conscript. That is the danger of rapid conscription. However, if he can use this effectively, he can quickly reconstitute his conscript force, and we're at a point in the game where it's not too late for conscripts to get really vetted up. Of course, getting the Papashas is going to help. Actually, it seems like the... Oh, no, okay, never mind. Yeah, getting the Papashas is going to be very helpful towards this goal, because they're pretty strong at close range. This is a map where close range engagements are abound, and so, yeah, it's going to go that way, most likely. It seems like the shock troops are not having a good day. They're going to be forced to retreat. However, in the center, it's the Germans that aren't having the best of days. They're getting suppressed by the Dushka from Charles Martel. So Dushka is very, very strong, of course, with the very, very, very powerful suppression. And, well, it's it's basically the only redeeming factor for the defensive doctrine, although those mines might be useful in some way. And, yeah. So Charles Martel is going to be using a very, very sort of, I guess you could say, unconventional doctrine. You could also say just bad doctrine. It's not really the best commander ever, but it can have its uses. It does have both the 120mm mortar and the Dushka heavy machine gun, so providing a pretty deadly combination of colony units. Alright, what are you trying to do, combat engineers? Please retreat. 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 You're getting gunned down by STG-44s. Retreat. You're not going to get unsuppressed while you're getting attacked by the SDGs. He will be able to escape, luckily for him. Looks like, however, the combat engineers went into a very, very nice flank, and they're going to be able to roast that machine gun. Looks like we're going to have roast machine gun for dinner tonight, and some partisans trying to spawn from this shack, seems like. Find that the Schwerpanzer headquarters has been built by Descarado in this very interesting position. It's in a pretty exposed position, actually. Pretty much any Soviet unit coming from this VP area can really put it into a lot of trouble, can put a lot of pressure up. And, well, it's not like the Germans are really going to have that many ways to defend it, because, well, there's this kind of lane, right? but there's also a lot of cover in the way. There's this train, there's a lot of things in the way, so quite a lot of shot blockers that the Soviets can use to avoid getting themselves, you know, destroyed by anti-tank guns like they are right now. Checking out the teching, you can see that the Soviets have gone quite a bit ahead. We have a lot of tier 3 units coming on the field. Both Char Martel and, well, Tukhachevsky and also the Maxis have upgraded tier 3s, but only the Maxis hasn't built any Su-76s, actually. No T-70s on the field. Clearly, the Allies don't feel like the early to mid-game sort of power of the T-70 is going to be in any way useful to them in this game. They're looking towards the late game, which might be a good idea. Might not be, however. They definitely have the sort of early to mid-game artillery superiority with all these 120s. But, hey, the Germans definitely have some advantages of their own. They've got a few positions that are well established, and they're not having any trouble sort of coming back from their setbacks, I guess you could say. And the Germans, of course, in the late game are going to be very, very strong. So, especially consider that this is Illebrook Station, so it's a map that very, very much limits the ability of the Soviets to use their mobility to their advantage. We're going to see a lot of German heavies. We already see that the Tiger Doctrine, you know, the Spearhead, has been picked by Spuknov. Dabis has Tiger Ace, and the other player has Special Operations with the Command Panther. So we have some potentially very, very dangerous big cats coming through later. And in fact, Descarado is going to be even more forced into being a Desperado for his Command Panther, because his Schwerpanzer quarters right now is being completely ass-blasted by a couple of Su-76s with artillery. And, well, the proliferation of these Su-76s is getting pretty alarming for, you know, the status of the Schwerpanzer. They can even just kind of charge ahead, ignore the anti-aircraft gunfire of that 37mm on top of the Schwerpanzer, and destroy it. So this is a good victory for the Allies. Again, however, it's going to force Descarado into that Command Panther even more. He's only got 2 CPs left to go before he can, you know, purchase the Command Panther. And at this point, with no AT of his own except a Raketenwerfer, he's really going to be forced into getting that vehicle if he wants to kind of stop down the tide of artillery Su-76 fire or, heck, anything else that the Soviets might want to bring on the field in terms of armor. In the north, very smart choice from Dabis getting this Panzer IV. However, of course, as you can see, the Maxis is going for a Katyusha. So both of these guys going for pretty much diametrically opposed strategies. We have the Maxis trying to be a little bit more defensive, in fact, which is kind of funny considering that he's the guy with all the shock troops and the Pinols. But with the Katyusha, he's going to be able to kind of deal with his opponents' machine guns. The Panzer Grenadiers also are going to be fairly vulnerable to it. And as a whole, you know, they're going to complement relatively well with all these Su-76s that his allies are going for. The problem is he doesn't really have any good AT guns to deal with the Panzer IV. So, to be completely honest, he should just request the aid of these Su-76s. Because at this point, having 4 Su-76s in the center doesn't really provide any capabilities to the Allies in this whole area that they don't have already. Whereas, you know, the anti-tank capabilities would be very, very well, you know, received up north. They need some kind of AT gun to deal with this. Very nicely done with that grenade. But here comes some AT partisans, just as we were talking about anti-tank. Looks like they're not going to be able to get the Panzerschreck shot because of the building. And they tried to follow through, but there's a machine gun. So well done screening his Panzer with the machine gun as he was retreating and forcing his opponents' infantry to retreat in a pretty bad position. Flares going down, actually, from, looks like the Special Operations. Looks like we have an artillery barrage coming through. Yeah, but the artillery barrage isn't going to hit anything. That's, once again, it's the first strike of the artillery that you always want to be sort of paying attention to, because if your first artillery salvo... Wait, both survived that. There's a demo charge here. Wonder what that is for. Anyway, the first artillery salvo is the one that the opponent doesn't expect. So it's the time when he's hopefully gonna have some units blobbed up. And he's not going to really have as quick reactions as he's going to after getting mauled 2 or 3 times by Katyusha rockets. And hearing the sound, he's not going to be really that reactive. So that's when you want to really strike and get some very, very nasty kills. But it doesn't seem like Maxis was able to do that, which is a little bit of a shame. And now he's going for an SU-76, actually, to counter the Panzer IV, despite the fact that he has Tier 4 available. That means that he doesn't really respect the ability of the Germans to later bring out Tigers and Panthers and all of that. If he did, he would have brought out an Su-85, absolutely, because he would have needed it. And in fact, he does need the Su-85, considering that we already have the Panther coming from Spucknapf. In fact, Panther from Spucknapf means that he's not going to go for the Tiger quite yet. Interesting choice. Looks like he was a little bit behind on the CPs as opposed to the Tiger's requirements of 13. So, yeah, he's going to go for the Panther. However, his ally, going for the Panzer IV, considering that he you know, has the Tiger Ace, I think that it would have been better served for Davis to go with the Panthers and for Spucknapf to go with the Panzer IV. Because Spucknapf, oh god, blow that up. Yeah, a little bit of damage against both the infantry and the Panther. A little bit of a late reaction though. Ooh, the Panther's gonna collapse the building. Wait, what? That didn't do any damage to the building. That's insane. Sniper's still alive, getting 23 kills. Well done. Well, Microd as well. As I was saying, it would be more, I guess logical for the guy with the Tiger Ace to go with the Panther because, well, he needs the extra building XP, because you get quite a lot of XP from actually completing a tier. Ooh, a lot of partisans are going to roam around, actually. Katyusha Barrage forcing away the Volksgrenadiers. The partisans trying to get into the building to get a little bit of cover, but the Panther pops smoke. Well done. It's going to get away. And, yeah, those partisans, unfortunately, are going to die. Mikhail Tukhachevsky has 3 partisan squads and 2 conscript squads. Right now, his manpower pool is being depleted faster than, well, the German one was in real life. And right now, it's not really looking like he's gonna have any other choices than use a lot of rapid conscription to try to get some conscripts back. What I would advise for him to do is, well, these partisans, he can keep a couple as like a permanent anti-tank squad. He can use them in ambushes. Of course, the partisans are gonna cloak and cover, so you can use that feature, especially on a map like Edelbrook Forest, where there's Edelbrook Station, where there's a lot of these like, I guess, debris patches near buildings that give heavy cover. You can just kind of park your partisans in there and they'll become invisible even to enemies just approaching from the other side. Because while directional cover is directional, cloak that you get by standing in cover is not directional. So it's kind of a weird thing about Company of Heroes. It looks like, however, the Germans are really bringing out the pain train of the armor. We have Command Panther, 2 Panzer IVs, and a Panther. The Panther is going to be supporting, in fact, the Command Panther. Again, a little bit of a redundancy over there. The Panther plus the Command Panther doesn't really give the Germans anything that they don't have. It would be better to pair the Command Panther with the Panzer IVs, so that the Panzer IVs, with their enhanced now anti-infantry abilities from, of course, the Command Panthers as support, can help out the Command Panther, who can deal with the armor. I don't know, this is kind of my view of it. But, of course, it could be just a lot of randoms fighting it out, so who knows, who knows. Looks like we have a couple of SUs trying to push up against the normal Panther, but not really having the easiest of times. And the Grenadiers are still alive, but there's 3 Panzer Grenadiers from Spucknapf, 3 Panzer Grenadiers from Davis as well. So the Germans are really going to start to bleed very hard very soon. Looks like the 2 Panzer IVs are trying to just kind of embark on a flank, but there's an Su-85 in the way, and they're going to have to retreat. This was potentially pretty dangerous against these Su-76s down here. Looks like 1 Su-76 for Tukhachevsky went down, which is, well, kind of sad for him. He's going to charge ahead with his conscripts, trying to get some anti-tank grenades, of course, on the Command Panther, getting a damage engine on it. So, of course, his partisans are trying to chase through. It does have an opportunity to spawn some partisans into this building, so this could potentially be pretty dangerous for the Panther. However, the proximity of this battle headquarters means that the Panzer most likely is going to be able to retreat. In fact, the partisans kind of spawn out the wrong door, and they have to walk, you know, quite a long way, and they cannot get the first shot off on the Panther. One of the partisan squads goes down. One of the actually, 2 of the partisan squads goes down, 3 partisan squads go down, and also conscript squads. Wait, my plurals are getting very messed up at this point. they also go down, and the last remaining conscript squad gets away with just a sliver of health. So this was a very disastrous push from Tukashevsky, and just as disastrous, it seems like for the Germans, is the north side. They're getting completely massacred by shock troops. Looks like one of these Panzer Grenadiers is going to go down, executed by the Papashas at close range, and the 2nd Panzer Grenadier squad tries a desperate last grenade, which almost succeeds in wiping out both squads, but it does not. And these other guys are going to get completely forced back by these penals. Yeah, who's winning? Probably the Germans, to be completely honest. They have more VPs, they have control over more territory, and they're the Germans. So they're going to have a little bit of a in-it superiority late game. This sort of a, you know, just a regular German superiority for the late game. That the Allies can't really change in any way. They're going to need to be playing smart. And at this point, playing smart, I guess, would just be to, like, kind of huddle up into 2 victory points instead of spreading out into trying to occupy all 3, I think. Especially considering the nature of their forces. Like, they have a lot of tank destroyers. They don't really have any medium tanks. And, in fact, kind of surprisingly, they're lacking artillery. So, having a lot of... well, if we do not consider these S-76s artillery, which, to be fair, we shouldn't. Yeah, what they're lacking is kind of the ability to really either flank the enemy and maneuver when through, of course, superior maneuver, or just kind of stand and fight in a just kind of head-to-head, head-butting brawl with the artillery providing the muscle. And they're not really taking advantage of the fact that they can really go with a lot of artillery pieces, both because of their doctrines. We have, of course, Shock Army, the Reserve Army that can provide ML-20s, and of course there are Soviets, so they get the pretty awesome Katyusha from Tier 4. They're not really taking advantage of that, and that, in my opinion, is a bit of a mistake, because they need some kind of strategy where they can surpass the Germans in at least one field and really just kind of bet on it in order to win. As they're doing right now, they've just kind of spammed a lot of infantry squads. Yeah, sure, those for them, they're working out pretty well. But they've also decided to complement these with a lot of tank destroyers that, well, they can deal with the enemy armor. It's like they're not going to win the game by themselves, you know. So yeah, these German Panzers and Tigers and Panzer IVs can kind of put the hurt on the Allied infantry, whereas these tank destroyers really maybe can't even deal with the German tanks. So yeah, they're kind of self-defeating by just spamming so many TDs. And at this point, I feel like going with some kind of artillery would be better for them, because the artillery can sort of deal with the infantry once the infantry is fixed in some way. Once the conflict starts to turn into a war of attrition, of stalemate. And that, of course, can be done, of course, by having a lot of tank destroyers, trying to deal with the enemy tank pushes, which is working out relatively well. The problem is these S-76s, they're pretty fragile. So any kind of flank from the Germans, any kind of engagement where it's not going perhaps the way of the Allies, and something like this is going to happen, the German Tiger, of course, took a lot more damage in terms of HP than the Allied forces did. It kind of soaked up more, but in the end, it didn't die, whereas the S-76 died. And the S-76 dying, you know, kind of carries with it a resource price tag, whereas the Tiger surviving, I mean, yeah, sure, you do have a slight reduction in terms of your manpower income when you're repairing, but who gives? It's still alive. You can bring it back, so it's really not really bleeding the Germans, I guess you could say. And the Germans are slowly but surely gaining the upper hand, which should concern the Allies, definitely. A bit of an attempt by the 2 Panzer IVs in the north to push through, and the the S-76 is going to try to respond, but once again, it's in a pretty vulnerable position. I mean, without the support of its friends, the S-76 can't really do too much because of its very, very, very weak, just, I don't know, very, very weak armor, very, very weak HP pool. Of course, the Panzer Faust from the Grenadiers just destroying its mobility, which is its only advantage. The S-85, however, does do quite a lot of damage to the Panzer IVs, forcing them away behind the smoke. However, as the Allied infantry pushes through, yeah, it seems like the Allied infantry is not going to have the punch to really deal with all of these German units. And wow, well done actually from the Su-85, getting that good attack round hits on the German tanks. Conscripts charging through from Mikhail Tukhachevsky. However, a massive grenade assault is going to really hurt them, wiping out one of the squads and forcing the other two to retreat. Looks like the rapid conscription was popped at the last possible second, giving a conscript squad in return to Tukhachevsky. So he's going to be able to at least get some conscripts back from that very disastrous engagement. Looks like Tank Destroyer is, well, not having a good day. Tank Destroyer is, well, yeah. Another problem with the Tank Destroyers is, of course, the line of sight sort of mechanics on Ederbrook Station. Like, there's a lot of ways in which the German tanks can kind of come in a direction where the Allied tanks aren't really expecting them to. So it could be pretty dangerous for them. They need to be kind of careful and overlap their fields of fire, their Tank Destroyers, quite well if they want to survive. However, it looks like they're doing that quite okay. We have a bit of a stalemate going on. Both sides, of course, kind of just probing each other, trying to grab these VPs, get a little bit of a raid in, harassment there, cap there. And artillery is firing on both sides with varying effectiveness. As you can see, that Panzerwerfer first volley was actually very effective with 8 kills. The Katyusha, however, is still at 8 kills after a, well, quite a long lifespan in Charles Martel's service. How's the Katyusha from Maxis doing? It's still up to 2 kills, which is not a lot. However, it gets finally a very nice barrage into infantry that was huddled up into a very tight corner. In the center, we have a push from Charles Martel with his penals, trying to kind of, I guess, spot for his vehicles in the rear and get some damage off on the tanks, and as well get some capping on the VP. However, it's not going to succeed. Of course, the supporting fire from the rear from the Germans is quite dangerous. And yeah, it seems like the Allies overall throughout the entire map are trying their pushes, but they're really getting rebuffed quite easily by the Germans. The Germans, however, are just not even trying their own attacks. They're just kind of pushing up to the VPs and then stopping, which is kind of puzzling considering the sort of advantage that they have when it comes to armor. Like, as you can see, we have Command Panther from Descarado, very well done with that Katyusha barrage. It might even wipe out one of these Obersoldaten. No, it will not. In fact, it will wipe out some of the conscripts. Lucky that it does not deal more damage. Very lucky that it does not deal more damage there. So we have Command Panther plus Free Panzer IVs, Spuknov with a Tiger and a Panther. So as you can see, we have a very massive armored force, whereas for the Allies we have Su-76, Su-85, 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 and Katyusha, which of course is in tanks. So we have how many Su-85s? 3 Su-85s plus 1 Su-76, that would be like 75, sorry. Plus 390, so that's 465 fuel in terms of armor. Already just the Command Panther and the Tiger with their 455 almost topped that. And then that's not even taking into consideration the other Panther that's 175, right? Yeah, 175 plus the Free Panzer IVs that is 125 times 3. That would be 75, 375. So the Germans basically overtop the Allies in terms of fielded armor by fuel spent by something like 500 fuel at this point. The fact that they're not just kind of charging ahead with these tanks is, well, pretty bad for them, because they're wasting their advantage that they have built up. And this makes this kind of a half-hearted push by Spuknov even more kind of puzzling, because, well, what if these two units were kind of supported by all these vehicles in the rear? You know, of course right now they're damaged, but what if they had waited and they were not damaged, and they would have pushed both in the center and in the south, because in the south is the only area in this map where you can have like this big tank push because you have a little bit of a space. So really what the Germans perhaps should have done is concentrated their Panzer IVs onto the south, along with maybe the Command Panther or something, And then the rest of the tanks on the central square, trying to push through from two flanks in a bit of a pincer move. I think that would have crushed the allies right about now, because it's not like these anti-tanks would have been able to deal with them. It's just not enough. Instead, they're letting their infantry getting suppressed by L2 Sturmovik attacks. They're letting their tanks kind of get picked off, not really picked off, but just kind of picked away at, one at a time by the allied tank destroyers, which is really the tank destroyers' I guess, holy grail, when the enemy doesn't really rush it. And they let it snipe at long range. As you can see, one Panzer IV versus one Su-85. Despite the problem with these free Panzer Grenadiers, the Su-85 gets a few nice shots, getting a little bit of free veterancy and forcing this Panzer IV to get back and repair. Earlier on, it was the Tiger. And then earlier on, it was these Panzer IVs. You know, just kind of a piecemeal, I guess, weakening of the German armored force, not really destroying it in any way, not really weakening in terms of removing its vehicles, but enfeebling it, I guess. And that's really not what the Germans want, because it's allowing the Allies more time to build more units, especially Katyushi. As you can see, we have 3 Katyusha on the field, maybe 4 Katyusha on the field at this point. So the German infantry force is going to be yet more hard-pressed, more and more as time goes on. Davis has 400 manpower remaining and 2+2 infantry squads, but those 2+2 infantry squads are at constant danger of getting just completely Katyusha out of the existence. As you can see, one Panzer Grenadier squad, as I speak, going down. Instead, Shpuknov has 3 Panzer Grenadiers, which have been spared so far, but he's got 1,500 manpower just sitting around and not doing anything. So he's kind of got the opposite problem. He's not using his resources at his disposal in any kind of correct way. And we have 3 Obersoldaten by Desperado and a Volksgrenadier, plus 500 manpower. So there's a little bit of floating over here, but once again, pretty dangerous to just kind of use these elite infantry units when the enemy has a lot of artillery, as you can see. So as long as the Allies can just kind of hold these German tanks at bay, and as long as these German tanks let themselves be held at bay by the Allied TDs, then, well, the problem is not going to present itself to the Allies in terms of the armor. They can focus on dealing with the infantry. And if they can focus on dealing with the infantry, this is still a game when you need a lot of infantry all the time. You need it for capping, you need it for harassing, you need it for scouting, you need it for planting down mines, repairing your tanks, you know, everything and all of that. So as you can see, it doesn't really matter that there's this Panzer IV around that these shock troops can't counter. It's not like the Germans can counter the shock troops hiding in the place where the tank can't reach them, although that shot was bullshit. That just kind of came through the house. Well done by the shock troops, wiping out one of those Panzer Grenadier squads, almost wiping out the second and being forced to retreat by the Panther. But, oh look, the Panther kills the Su-85. What can it do? Can it capture this VP? No, it cannot. So the Allies are slowly but surely surging ahead when it comes to the sort of territory game. Territory map control, VP game, all of that. So it's going better for the Allies than, you know, meets the eye. Of course, we have a nice sneak cap from this Rakan River. But, well, at this point, I don't really know. Ooh, a T-34-76. And, ooh, nice, well done. The Panther pops the concentrated fire on the Su-85, but nothing really follows up. In fact, the anti-tank on the 76mm from Tukhachevsky gets a few nice shots in on the Panther, as well as the Su-85, but there was nothing to follow up. So, at this point, the sacrifice of half of the Panther's health bar is really worthless. I mean, was in vain. Like, it's not like they're gonna do anything with it. Although a nice fragmentation bombing comes through on the Su-85, and the Tiger is gonna be able to come in and probably destroy the Su-85. There's also a juicy Katyusha over there that it could shoot at, but no, it's gonna focus on the Su-85, getting the guaranteed kill, and that's gonna be a good, well done executed operation. In fact, we have a triple cap on the field for the Germans. The Allies have 3 minutes of time to try to capture one of these points. Otherwise, they're gonna incur some pretty severe penalties. Okay, they're gonna lose the game. At this point, however, as you can see, the 2 shock troops, they take a little bit of damage from this Panzer IV, but they eventually get into there, and despite that shock grenade, they're gonna be able to escape. Su-85 comes in and tries to deal with the Panzer IV. However, it's going to get met by a Brummbär and another Panzer IV. However, in this kind of a lane choke point scenario, the Su-85 is exactly in its natural habitat, and it's probably going to be able to fend off all of these German vehicles. In fact, a nice partisan flank might even destroy this Panzer IV. And let's see, no. Looks like the Panzer Grenadiers are going to be able to massacre these partisans and protect the Panzer IV, but just barely. It was almost a kill on the Panzer IV. So once again, the German armor just kind of has to retreat with its tail tucked between its legs, leaving these VPs to the mercy of the Allies. And, well, ooh, nice mine. Yeah, kind of, I guess, preventing the Allies from losing due to VPs. However, it's worth noting that they're down to actually 120. So 1 minute of triple cap did indeed come through. If the Germans can do that 2 more times, they win. Can they do that 2 more times? Well, if they pool their armor together, yeah, absolutely. They still have a very, very strong tank force because, once again, it wasn't like attrition away or anything. It was just, I guess, delayed in its relentless attack. And the T-34-76 tries to charge after the Panzerwerfers. Perhaps not the best move. It's gonna die. The Panthers are pushing in the south, but once again, they're useless against this machine gun. So the machine gun's gonna be forced back by the flank from these Volksgrenadiers. Very nicely done with the assault grenades. However, the flank from these conscripts is probably gonna do, yeah, it might even just reclaim the Southern VP. Southern VP, which is now pretty important because we have a cap attempt from these Panzer Grenadiers in the north. The center is in the control of the Germans, so the Southern VP is really crucial for that triple cap, of course. We have a massive conscript push trying to just kind of charge in. Katyusha barrage accompanying it falls on empty ground because the Allies are basically underestimating how little infantry the Germans have. And in fact, the Allied infantry just kind of charges into it. Nice AT grenade is going to come down on the Panther. Looks like the close range sort of knife fight between the shock troops and the Panzer Grenadiers is going to be definitely going in the favor of the shock troops. 27 kills for these beasts. And at this point, the Su-85 is really laying into these German tanks in the area. And once again, they're allowing themselves to be laid into by just kind of standing at long range into a choke pointy area where the Su-85 can just kind of pull in a lot of that fire. However, the shock troops don't capture the VP, which is puzzling. In the center, we have a nice push from these partisans, just kind of offsetting the balance of these German tanks. We have an attempt at establishing sort of a base of operations into the center square from the Allies that probably isn't going to be all that effective, but the tank gun does set up and forces back the Tiger, so this is well done. The shock troops as well, you know, having a good time capturing the VP. And in the meantime, these Panzer Grenadiers getting a, they're going to get a satchel charge thrown at them, which is going to pull them away from the VP, but the VP is already theirs. And the Allies are still at 100 VPs, so they're still in this game. However, the problem still presents itself. How are the Allies going to push into all these sort of superior German vehicles? Well, if the Germans just kind of continue allowing themselves to get shot at without really retaliating with a big push of their own, well, yeah, it's pretty easy to see how. It's not like the Germans really have had the initiative throughout the last 20 to 25 minutes, despite them having the very superior forces, which is puzzling. They're playing way too defensive with their vehicles, which are meant to really push in and get the decisive blow on the enemy. In fact, Davis hasn't even purchased his Tiger Ace because, I don't know, I guess he just doesn't... he just doesn't trust in the ability of the Tiger Ace to be of any use to his victory. I don't know. He does not want to get himself handicapped by that resource penalty. And of course, he doesn't really even have the manpower to pull it on the field. This could be dangerous. Aw, lucky. Anyway, still doing a lot of damage to the very, very enfeebled German infantry force. However, in the north, the Maxis is also getting quite attritioned out. He's only got one shock troop left. Let's see if the other ones are... No, definitely not for Tukhachevsky. He's got a lot of infantry, and not even for Charmartel. He's got a few units roaming around the map. Yeah, I mean, his opponent is also the only one on the German side that really has a decent infantry force left. He's got 4 Oberstleutnant, however, which is, well, an interesting composition, let's just say that. Especially with the SDGs and not the LMGs. I don't know. Oh, hello. Popping focus sight. Trying to peekaboo at the German tanks, but yeah, as you can see, we have an attempt by these Panzer IVs to stop the shock troops, but shock troops can just throw a smoke grenade at the only place where the Panzer IV can see them, and even then, the Panzer IV has got a lot of debris to deal with. So once again, that infantry just proving itself quite effective in the sort of enclosed environment that they're facing in the Edinburgh Station map. Nice, once again, using the L2 Sturmovik attack to get some suppression done on the enemy ground units. And yet more Panthers being purchased, and yet more Panzer IVs being positioned. So the Germans, as you can see at this point, have some pretty nasty floats, especially when it comes to field. They're just floating a lot. Again, that is because they're not being aggressive enough with their armor. They're not unleashing it like the beasts that they are. They're not getting those coordinated flanks and pushes at once into a specific area, concentrated with all their vehicles, aimed at crushing the enemy resistance in basically one fell swoop. They're not doing that. And they're letting their resource stockpiles build up without really using them, because they're not really fighting with their vehicles. They're just kind of pushing up and then saying, oh no, my tank took a couple of shots, better pull it back and retreat. And by doing this, they just kind of keep sending in their vehicles one by one, making sure that they never really have the confidence to actually push in and get some kills on the enemy, you know, get some terrain captured. Get these 100 VPs that the Allies have left shaved off. Well done by the Brumbear. But it's not going to be enough, because once again, the shock troops, nimble as they are, they get behind some kind of obstacle. Somehow they're still spotted, but they can capture the VP. The south has been captured, although the Katyusha is going to die to the command Panther, which is very unfortunate. No, what are you doing? No, 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 charge! Kill the Katyusha! Kill the Katyusha! No! Charge! Again, once again, the cowardice of these Germans is staggering. That command Panther literally had the Katyusha there. All he needed to do was thrust his very, very long gun barrel down the very exposed jugular of that Katyusha. However, he didn't. And that's one Katyusha that is going to be available for the Allies to once again fire on the German units. Get some maybe kills, maybe just suppress the enemy. Bit of a waste of those partisans, but hey, at least it provided a little bit of intelligence. Look at this. Like, the Germans, 96, 99, and 69 when it comes to pop cap, so that's like 70 plus 200, 270 around. The Allies are at 50, 71, 75, so around 145, 190. So the Germans are basically 70 ahead. It's almost as if Descarado could not exist. If Descarado just didn't exist, if it was just a 2v3 between Spuknov, Davis, and the rest of the Allies, they would still be even. But look at how the forces are displayed on the map. The Allies are the ones in a concave pushing towards the enemy sort of spawn areas, whereas the Germans are the ones that are huddled up around their base areas with their, of course, massive trucks and all of that. So it's really strange that the Allies are the ones that are in a alpha male posture, whereas it's the Germans who are superior that are sort of cowering away in fear. So I'm not quite sure what that's coming from that is making the Germans so afraid of using their own superiority. But it's definitely the only reason why they haven't won yet, because they've won most of the engagements. They get a lot of wipes. Mikhail Tukhachevsky especially has been pretty, well, liberal in the use of his infantry, whereas his allies, well, they've lost quite a few armored units. Charmartel actually has pretty much conserved most of his armor, actually. Take a look at this. He's lost the T-34-76 on Su-85 and the 276s. So those are like the two least valuable units. He's lost them, and then one of the valuable units. So that's okay, considering how long the game has been going on. The Germans have lost 0 of their tanks. But their tanks have given them nothing as well. So 0 risk, 0 reward has been the name of the game for them. Whereas the Allies have been a little bit more aggressive. And it's serving them well. Ooh, this Su-85 might be able to actually destroy the Brummbär. Yep, well done. And the Su-85, instead of being flanked from the rear by these two Panzer IVs through this route, the Panzer IVs come from the choke point, from the front of the Su-85. This is puzzling as well. Also, another central push from these conscripts, popping that rapid conscription, getting a lot of conscript squads back, and the anti-tank grenades are going to come through. And the Tiger and the Panther, the two massive German beasts, cowering before the might of the Soviet conscripts, you know, the tier 1, or actually tier 0 infantry that is not having a good time. Looks like the Su-85 died, and Davis says good trade of a Brummbär for an Su-85. For the vet-free Su-85, I agree. However, it's still, again, the Allies have a triple cap. This is absolutely insane. Look at this. The Germans have everything. They have a ton of units at full HP. They have a ton of resources to replace any units that they may lose. Whereas the Allies, you know, haggard units retreating back to base, masses of conscripts without really any, like, you know, direction. Just a couple of artillery units, mismatched, just only shock troops in the late game when there's tanks, of course, running around. And they have a triple cap. How is this possible? They only, of course, only have tank destroyers instead of a well-balanced mix of medium tanks, anti-infantry armor, and, you know, heavy tanks. So it's just kind of weird. Panzer Tactician. Best ability in the game. Ooh boy. Looks like another Panzer Grenadier goes down to that Katyusha. You know, if you had charged this Katyusha earlier on with your command Panther, perhaps your ally wouldn't have lost his Panzer Grenadiers over there. And, you know, that was a vet-free squad. It's also interesting to kind of compare the effects of the German and Allied artillery. As you can see, the German artillery, we have 39 kills between these two Panzerwerfers, which is very, very good. Whereas the Allied artillery, who has, well, it's present in bigger numbers, as you can see. So that's 34 kills from those Katyushas, 54 kills from this one as well, and then 88 kills as a whole. First that Katyusha went down. Well done by Davis, finally using some of his units in an aggressive manner and getting a kill on the Katyusha. Might have to trade in the Panzer IV with the damaged engine. Oh no, he's gonna charge in the healthy Panzer IV instead of just kind of letting the other Panzer IV die. He's gonna charge in the other one and lose the other one as well, of course, with the satchel charges coming in. Su-85 gonna get some good shots in. In the meantime, in the south, we have absolutely no attempts from this horde to capture the VP finally coming in. The center is still held by the Germans. The Germans are down to 92 points, and the Allies are down to 71. So the Allies are still in a sort of weakened position, and now there's a triple cap menacing itself for the Allies because, of course, these pushes from the OKW in the south. And, well, the shock troops in the north are going to put an end to that dream for the Germans. Okay, so it looks like the German tanks are finally moving in. They're doing something. We have the Panther charging in at the Su-85. Looks like it's going to support a push from the infantry, which is, of course, quite good. But, well, there's more Allied infantry. As you can see, there's masses of conscripts running around the map from Tukhachevsky. And these conscripts over here, there's no counters to them because of these two Panthers not really being able to deal with infantry. These Pioneers are not being pushed into the capping area, which is puzzling. These Oberstleutnant and Volksgrenadiers were treated at full HP, which is also weird. In the center, we have these Su-85s and combat engineers capturing this VP, and they're going to be able to once again stop the bleed and pull it into the favor of the Allies. The Allies are down to 57, but they're not out yet. And the two Su-85s are going to be defense enough against the German Panthers, although one of them is about to go down. Finally, a little bit of an aggressive move from this Panther does get the kill. Well done. And looks like the Tiger Ace is on the field, and now the Germans are really starting to make use of their armor the way it's supposed to and charge in. The Allies, as you can see, the difference is pretty stark. The Allies are now down to their essentially last gasps. They're back to their base. They've got the backs to the wall. They've got a few units still, but yeah, the overwhelming German superiority is really starting to get felt. They need to be in some way stopped. And if the Germans really start to push in aggressively with all their units, I don't see a way in which this is gonna go, well for the Allies, because they're just so weak, and all these guys are gonna get wiped by their own satchels. Very unfortunate. But the Tiger Ace takes a lot of damage, and the Tiger Ace taking damage is the worst thing that can happen. Although the shock troops are gonna get the cap. Very well done. As you can see, once again, shock troops sneakily getting in, and they're not gonna die. The Tiger Ace taking damage is basically the worst thing that can happen, because this thing is, well, it's gonna die. That's, I guess, relatively fine, because he gets at least the resources back, you know, the resource income back. But if the Tiger Ace is sitting back, getting repaired, and wasting its time, it's just the worst, because you're also paying an upkeep for it. That's very, very massive. So you want that thing to be essentially as cost-time effective as possible. That word does not exist, I just invented it. But yeah, because it just takes such a big toll on your resources. You want it to just have an impact. And you can either have it have like a burst of impact and then die, which it didn't have because it just died. But you can either have a burst of impact and then have it die, so that it does not really waste your resources, or you can try to have it have an impact the entire game, which is always pretty difficult. Looks like the Panzer army is just back at base repairing, and that's allowing these Obersoldaten to get just run over by the Allied tanks. Once again, the T-34-76 is pushed into the sort of central area. It's gonna busy these German tanks a little bit, but it's gonna die. Although, it's not like the German tanks are really doing anything, because they're allowing these conscripts to get the VP. In the north, the shock troops have gotten the other VP, and they're gonna absolutely execute these German troops that were trying to recapture them. The Axis are down to 76 VPs, whereas the Allies are down to 57. What infantry units the Germans have that can take care of the VPs, control them, and defend them? Well, we have 3 Obersoldaten plus 1 Sturmpile plus 1 Volksgrenadier from Descarado. We have 3 Panzer Grenadiers from Spucknapf. And then we have 2 Panzer Grenadiers and a Grenadier from Dalvis. So it's, as you can see, it's not even at this point that much of a difference between the Allies and the Germans in terms of the number of infantry units that they have. So I really don't see why the Germans, with the absolutely massive superiority of armor that they have, I don't see why they're letting themselves get so heavily pushed back. It's just very, very weird. Looks like the Su-85 in the north is gonna die. Katyusha Barrage in the center tries to turn the tide of these Panzer Grenadiers, but it's a little bit of a mute point. In the south, nicely done, just barely surviving with the cap. It was about to get decapped by those Pioneers. Su-85 Vet 3 is gonna die, unfortunately, and yeah, the Allies I think the Allies are gonna lose anyway. I mean, they've got no way of defeating this tank horde that the Germans have. I mean, they've held for a while, but now they're gonna eventually get, decapped as the German tanks push into the base, and the Allied infantry have no more chances of getting into the cap circles. Yeah, a long time coming, though. So well done to the Allies. Looks like we have the mortar capturing the north. Well done. The south's gonna get taken by some Volksgrenadiers, and the center is German. So the triple cap is gonna come through, and we only have 1 minute left. Although Katyusha Barrage into the mortar is gonna force it to kind of change positions. It's still gonna get the cap, though, unless it gets wiped 1 second before that. Well done. So that's only a double cap. So the Allies just slightly earning themselves, a few extra seconds of life. However, I don't see how they're gonna recapture any of these points. So yeah, I think this is gonna be the end, my only friend. Engineers pushing up. Engineers getting destroyed. But they do almost get the decap. Although, in the south we have a push from the conscripts. It's probably gonna die because of these free Panthers. At this point, through sheer force of MG42s, Pinto-mounted MG42s, they're just gonna gun down all the Allied infantry approaching. And yeah, basically it's gonna be the end. Well, I've already spoken to pretty much extensive lengths about the Germans. About the Allies as well, they were, in fact, probably a little bit too wasteful with their units. Especially their vehicles. I mean, it was really the lack of vehicles that really did the Allies in. They played very well with their infantry, they played well with their artillery, but in the end, they just couldn't counter the German heavy armor. A bit like I said at the beginning. Not sure if the Soviets can handle that, and well, they couldn't. So yeah, that's basically about it. Once again, an hour-long replay. You guys really like to send in hour-long replays. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you've enjoyed. I'll see you soon. As always, the link for the replays will be down in the description below. So if you have a replay that you want to send in, well, you'd be free to do so. In fact, you'd be welcome to do so. Have a nice day. See you soon.